Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the stories in some of our favorite games and ask the tough questions to figure out what is right and what is wrong. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're packing the family up in the car and heading to the west side of Boston for a vacation to Fallout 4's Nuka World. In case you missed any of the previous episodes in the Philosophy and Ethics series, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down this and other games, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. As crazy as it sounds, it's sometimes easy to forget or overlook the amount of stress the sole survivor in this series has been through. He was frozen for over 200 years and had to deal with a plethora of problems in the wasteland, ranging from super-mutants to raiders and
word from a settlement asking for help. There's still hope in there are Minutemen out there. The only chance to start rebuilding the Minutemen is to show people that they can count on us when they need us.
That's not even getting into taking down the Institute and dealing with the crap the Railroad and the Brotherhood of Steel have thrown our way. After all of that, it would be nice if there was just some place that we could go to relax. Thankfully, a random advertisement on our Pip-Boy radio has the solution to our woes.
What if there was a place with all the zip of Nuka quench your thirst for adventure and Nuka World?
Hiya, kids! Remember, Nuka World is only open for a few more weeks in October. Come down and see me and Cappy one last time before buckling down for the winter. Don't forget to bring your empty bottle of Nuka-Cola to get $15 off at the gate. So hop aboard the Nuka Express and come and see the whole Nuka family while you still can.
The Nuka Express is accessible through the Nuka World Transit Center. Parking fees will apply. Price is subject to change due to end of season.
That's right. There's a theme park just outside of Boston where we can go and spend a day or two relaxing. Unfortunately, we weren't the only ones to hear the broadcast, and by the time we show up to the transit station, there's already a crowd of people waiting to get in. No worries though, our handy-dandy cryolator is here to help us shorten the line. After clearing the area, we make our way inside the station and meet a man named Harvey, who claims that Nuka World is full of raiders that are holding his family hostage. We'll find out shortly that his story is more or less a ruse meant to lure travelers to Nuka World, where they can be used and abused by a group of raiders that have the place locked down. But all I can think is, why is he even here? The advertisement on the radio was enough to bring me and several others to the station, with the express intent of making our way to the park. So why bother having this whole intricate setup? They could have done this in so many other ways, including having some kind of friendly ambassadors that would make people think they were going to a real park that had been fixed up. Or maybe just putting up signs that would lead people in the right direction. Putting Harvey out there just seems so odd. And he doesn't really work out for them in this situation, as he isn't a true raider at heart, and he winds up telling us the truth when we offer him a stim pack because he feels bad for lying to people. Not that his lie made a whole lot of sense, as he made it seem like there would be some kind of massive battle to get his family back. Why would anyone in their right mind want to help him unless they had a group of their own friends to take on the threat that they are now aware of? And if you're going to lie to people to try and get them to go somewhere, it's usually best to make the location sound peaceful and nice, not super hostile. So it's pretty clear at this point that these raiders are a group of idiots. But they've piqued my interest, and now I want to head to the park even more. After grabbing some souvenirs, we start up the monorail and make our way to the park itself. The ride is pretty cool, providing us with our first views of the park as we roll along, and it introduces us to someone who will wind up being pivotal to the next stage of the journey. After getting the basic announcements out of the way, the voice of a man named Gage comes over the radio to welcome us to what is likely to be certain death. He seems to be aware of what Harvey told us, or maybe he's just reading off our pre-planned script, as it was always pretty obvious that we were heading into trouble. But he also says that he has an interesting offer for us if we can make it through whatever is coming next. And that turns out to be something called the Gauntlet. The Raiders have set up their own version of a theme park, meant for weary travelers to test their skills and likely die. But that isn't going to work on us. This trap-filled maze is kind of cool and offers the chance to pick up some great loot while also taking back some control by going agonizingly slow through it.
Jesus, who's torturing who? Pick up the pace, Vic!
The announcer will get really mad at you if you take your time, trying to hurry you along and force mistakes. And it made me laugh every time he derided me for being slow.
Come on, Vic, while we're young here.
Coming to the end of the maze, we wind up in a building called the Cola Cars Arena. And it turns out this whole thing was more or less just a ruse to bring in victims for their leader, a man named Coulter. Coulter is a very special kind of stupid, as he thinks the best way to show off his strength is to put himself in a suit that makes him basically invincible and kill off unsuspecting wastelanders who found themselves outmatched. If he would have spent half the time building loyalty as he did coming up with this whole Gauntlet thing, he might have stayed in charge a little longer. But he apparently was more interested in being in charge than actually leading anyone, and Gage, the voice from the tram, shows up once more via a speaker in the pre-fight locker room to point us in the direction of a Nuka World squirt gun that's going to be our best weapon against the Raider leader. It turns out Coulter's suit can withstand the power of a mini-nuke, but is powerless against a little spray of water. Even with that little bit of help, the battle is still a little difficult, and it takes a few blasts of water and smacks from the cryolator to take him down for good. His body hasn't even finished hitting the ground when we hear the announcement from Gage that our defeat of the Overboss officially hands that title to us, and holy shit! Their way of picking a new leader revolves around a fixed fight, where Coulter is supposed to win easily, but where a single point of failure, either a malfunction in his suit or the betrayal of one guy, could mean that anyone could get the job? How did these guys manage to take over a whole park? Well, it turns out they didn't. See, at some point in the past, Coulter wound up wrangling 3 groups of raiders together and storming what was a peaceful trading post in the main entry zone for Nuka World. He made all kinds of promises and seemed charismatic enough, but over time the groups grew frustrated with him as he kind of stalled out. Apparently, they were waiting on him to lead them into the other sections of the park, but he decided that just hanging out at the top of Fizztop Mountain was good enough. Over time, a plot to get rid of Coulter arose, because the groups apparently liked the idea of being ruled over, but none of them wanted to run the show. The leaders of each of the groups conspired with Gage to pick a new overboss, and we just so happened to fit the mold they were looking for. But I don't like being used. I could go in guns blazing, they are raiders after all, but in this one instance, we'll hear out the plan before making any pronouncements. Meeting Gage in Coulter's old house, we learn that he is one of those people that wants all the power of being a leader without the burden of the job. He likes to hang out behind the scenes, acting as a sycophant to whoever seems to be in charge so he can reap the rewards. As if he's trying to get on my bad side, though, he also starts talking shit about the Minutemen, calling them has-beens, and questioning why I would ever decide to run with a group like them. Excuse me? Do you even know what kind of group you're in charge of? At least the Minutemen do good in the Commonwealth under my leadership. What good have these has-been raiders done? They couldn't even capture a measly theme park over the year they've been sitting on their asses because their supposed overboss wasn't willing to do the work for them. It was at that moment that I made up my mind about how this was going to go down. For starters, I needed to flex my muscles a bit and show each of the raider groups what they could expect out of me. I introduced myself to the operators first, probably the only group in the park I could even consider keeping around, as they're mainly just after the money and don't really care about where it comes from so long as it keeps flowing. In theory, if we could get the park up and running, they would probably be content to sit back and just take a cut of the profits. Their leader, Mags, even seems to be on board with an idea in line with that, as she tells us that they only joined up with Coulter's plan because they wanted to restore Nuka World to its intended purpose of taking money from people. Next up, we head over and visit with the Pack, a simplistic group of morons that sees the whole world as their playground and takes the idea of might makes right way too seriously. These guys, run by a man named Mason, would likely have been furries in the time before the bombs dropped, as they see themselves almost as a pack of wolves. I could honestly imagine Mason cosplaying as a puppy on the weekends, and the group in general just doesn't really have any redeeming qualities. I might not be quite so annoyed with them if they would have shut the loud dogfight down when the new overboss walked in, as I couldn't even hear myself think over the noise.
The Pack? Fitting. Smell like it.
Never heard that one before.
But even the Pack isn't so bad compared to the final group of misfits. The Disciples don't really care about money and aren't really into anything other than cold-blooded murder. They want to kill anyone and everyone they can, and the messier the better. They're the stereotypical pack of raiders that we might see in the wasteland, though with a little more hubris than most. And they're the final nail in the coffin for the groups in my eyes. I didn't come to Nuka World to babysit, and I definitely didn't come to do a bunch of work that would only benefit everyone else while I get nothing worth my time in return. As I've been gallivanting around the wasteland, saving people and hunting things, this group of idiots, led by an even bigger idiot, has been hanging out and hurting people. They took over what was a perfectly good trading post and made it into a nightmare, and they need to go. Now, the counter-argument to this might be that the world has gone to shit and the raider way of life is the only real way of doing things now. So many groups have tried and failed to rebuild society in the past 200 years, and there isn't much point in it now because there will always be groups of raiders and other threats that could come along and tear it all down. But that way of thinking is just so defeatist. Just giving up and going along because, well, this is just the way things are, is no way of doing things in my eyes. If everyone thought that way, we'd never see any cures for diseases or improvements to the quality of life in the world that we live in. And I get it. Sometimes the difficulty of overcoming the obstacles we face seems impossible. When every news headline is doom and gloom, when it feels like the world is crumbling around us, it can be hard to see the point in doing anything other than giving in to the way that things are. But when the world seems lost, we need people who can push through the darkness and refuse to let the state of things make them numb to the suffering all around. Gage's admission when we talked to him in the Overboss's palace says it all, as he's more or less given up on doing any good, choosing instead to get what he sees as what the world owes him. He figures everyone else is doomed anyway, so they can either be a raider or be a victim. But those aren't the only options. The raiders could choose to be a force of good in the world. They could have come into Nuka World and helped the traders while also clearing out the park and making it into a place where other weary travelers could stay in safety. Instead, they chose to actively make it worse. And when you say the world is doomed, and then you help to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy by harming others and taking what you want by force, you are defeating your own argument. Gage is arguing that the only way of doing things is survival of the fittest, while he is on top, holding the gun, that is. I would venture a guess that he wouldn't feel the same way if he was on the wrong end of that gun. And that's not even mentioning the fact that the Raiders are basically arguing for anarchy while simultaneously living in a hierarchical structure where each group has a leader, and they all look to the overboss to keep them in line. It's even kind of a democratic system, as they all agreed that it was time for a new overboss when Coulter wasn't living up to their expectations, and then agreed to follow the new guy that showed up and killed Coulter. But what about these traitors that I mentioned a couple of times now? When Coulter and the gangs showed up in Nuka World, there was a decent trading hub that they wound up taking over. They put these collars on the necks of the traitors and are forcing everyone to work for them, meaning they're slave owners at this point and giving us yet another reason to want these clowns gone. Visiting the little hub the traitors all seem to be living in, we can meet several of the vendors, including a woman named Mackenzie, who has an interesting proposition for us. See, she's more than happy to have an overboss running things, but she isn't thrilled to be trapped in her role with the Raiders. Choosing her words very carefully, she suggests that if we aren't happy with the state of Nuka World, we should take it upon ourselves to do things differently, starting by wiping out the Raider gangs. And of course I'm going to wipe them out. These gangs are a blight on the wasteland, and their ideology goes against everything we stand for. After spending weeks rebuilding the Minutemen, getting rid of the Institute, stopping the robots of the Mechanist, and saving random wastelanders from a plethora of threats, it would be absolutely stupid to throw that all away and go in with the Raiders. See, even if we didn't completely disagree with how they do things, the eventual course of the story here takes us to not only giving parts of the park away to the gangs, but also to establishing a presence in the Commonwealth with our new group of friends. We would be tearing down everything we worked for to this point for what? A few caps? I'm not playing that game. And just real quick, this is probably the weakest part of the Nuka World DLC in my mind. There are only two options here, to work with or against the Raider gangs. Wiping them out here is the obvious choice for the way that we've been handling things, though depending on your goals, you might want to side with them. But wiping them out also kind of puts a damper on the intended story, as there is no other group to claim the parks for. A competent game developer would have given us the option to put our favorite Commonwealth group in charge of the parks. Imagine for just a second that you could assign a park to the Minutemen as a stronghold in the area, or to the Brotherhood of Steel as a defense for the trading post. Maybe one of them would be a good spot for the railroad to call home or to hide synths. Or even for the Institute to establish a base above ground under the sole survivor's leadership. The possibilities here were endless, and we're left with the choice of siding with the Raiders to destroy things or killing them all. Thankfully, the Raiders aren't really needed for what we're going to do next. See, wiping them all out frees up the park a bit, and it gives us the chance to roam around without needing to please anyone else. Instead of needing to figure out who should be in charge of what, we kind of just own it all. After a little work, that is. Yes, even while on vacation, we find ourselves getting knee-deep in trouble. Outside of Nuka Town, the main entrance to the park, there are 4 other park areas to explore and a ton of locations to check out. The first of these, and one of my personal favorites, is the Galactic Zone. This section of the park leans into the futuristic space theme that was super popular in the 1950s in the United States, and winds up being a lot of fun to explore, despite the tedious nature of some of the collections involved. As we check it out, we'll find ourselves visiting attractions like Vault-Tec Among the Stars, an exhibit best explored when we talk about Vault-Tec in a couple of weeks. There's also things like the Nuka Galaxy, the space-themed roller coaster that takes us through some really fun space battles in search of the main goal of the area, Star Cores. Star Cores are the heart of the mainframe found in Star Control at the center of the park. This system was implemented as a way to control the bots that make up a vast majority of the park staff, and it wasn't exactly great even before the bombs fell. We can find several terminal entries detailing the perceived risk to guests in the Galactic Zone from the robots that were having trouble functioning properly in the Star Control network. You might expect that this issue could result in a few minor injuries in the worst-case scenario, but it's actually much worse than that because every robot in the park is equipped with a defensive system in case of emergencies. This is yet another example of an over-the-top company making all of the wrong choices. While it makes sense to have some security guards, having everything from vending machines to robot janitors and mascots armed to the teeth is just insane. All it takes is for one of those machines to malfunction or be hacked, and you have a massive mess on your hands. The Star Control system is also causing a lot of stress to the human maintenance team as we find out that they were overworked and feeling like management was completely ignoring the problems in the park. This is actually way too realistic, as anyone who's ever worked at a lower-level job at just about any company can tell you. But the same entries that detail the problems also give us the first mention of something that will become a main focus as we go: Project Cobalt. This top-secret project takes a ton of resources from all the parks and seems to be a major point of discussion among the staff. No one quite knows what it is or how their individual parks are involved, but they do know that it drains their budgets and is putting the overall park at some kind of risk. But to unravel that mystery, we have to rewind a bit and go back to when we first entered the park and ran into a lovely woman by the name of Sierra. Sierra is a Nuka World fanatic who spent her life collecting everything even remotely tied to the Nuka-Cola brand. She apparently has a Nuka-Cola museum in the capital Wasteland, and I've got to give her props for her dedication to something so simple, while everyone else is fighting just to survive day to day. She has come to Nuka World to collect more merch for her museum, but also to participate in the Hidden Cappy contest that the park started just before the war. You could apparently wear a special pair of Cappy glasses that would reveal otherwise invisible paintings on various walls around the park, with each of those hidden Cappies revealing a letter that would spell out a secret word. Once you had the secret phrase, you could punch it into a keypad and meet the inventor of Nuka-Cola, John Caleb Bradberton. Sierra wants to find the hidden Cappies so that she can get into Mr. Bradberton's office and find the original Nuka-Cola formula, as that would be the crown jewel in her collection. And she enlists our help in the search. Catching back up to the present, we leave the Galactic Zone and head over to the next point of interest, Dry Rock Gulch. This area of the park is overrun with bloodworms, and in addition to clearing them out, we're given the task of helping some of the town's residents by a robot named Sheriff Hawk. No relation. Most of this area is pretty straightforward, as we recover an escaped horse, serve a refreshing Nuka-Cola to 1 or 2 patrons, and have a duel in the street with One-Eyed Ike. It might have actually been my favorite park if not for the constant barrage of bugs and bloodworms. Seriously, every time I turned around there was some giant insect or worm coming at me, and it was actually really annoying. We also learned that the saloon was kind of a problem for Nuka World, as people would come in and get sloppy drunk on a consistent basis. Apparently, the staff weren't allowed to cut people off, and they didn't even have any food on the menu to help absorb the Nuka-Cola Dark that people were imbibing by the bucketful. The fact that people were coming here, presumably with their families, and getting wasted is just nuts to me. I've never been a big drinker, as I don't really see the appeal in it, but why on earth are you going to a theme park and getting drunk? What must be wrong in your life or mind to think that that is even remotely okay? But that's not even the worst part, as one of the terminal entries in the saloon mentions how they are short-staffed, and suggesting that, while they legally need people over 18 since they serve alcohol, they could use a staffer named Jenny from another area because, and I quote, "she looks like she could pass for 18 easy." Maybe the world of Fallout is more lax with these kind of rules, but in the real world, that kind of thinking is exactly how you wind up losing your liquor license and the business that comes along with it. After helping the requisite number of people, we're granted the key to Mad Mulligan's mine, where we can finally clear out the last of the bloodworm infestation and get this park into shape. From the Wild West, we make our way to the jungle of the Safari Adventure Park and one of my favorite characters in the game. As we walk into the park, we find a fight going on between a man named Cedo and a bastardization of a Deathclaw known as a Gatorclaw. After helping Cedo out, he offers to take us back to his home and show us something that he says will help with what is apparently a monster problem in the park. It turns out he has a recording from a man named Dr. McDermott, a scientist who is apparently working on some kind of project in the park involving the gator claws that are now running rampant. There's apparently a cloning facility in the park that was being used pre-war to clone the animals. Cedo thinks the machine itself is in what he calls the Big Triangle House, near the entrance to the park, though we don't have access to the facility just yet, as we need to find a passkey. In the process of searching for that, we uncover more mentions of Project Cobalt on a terminal in one of the maintenance areas, with a man named Ross talking about it in regard to a couple of his co-workers acting shady. Ross is able to get a little information out of one of them, Frimke, revealing the project is some kind of collaboration between the military and Nuka World, though the details are sparse. Ross apparently couldn't leave well enough alone, and the final entry we find comes from Frimke as he mentions Ross has disappeared after going to Bradberton about Project Cobalt. Getting back to the main focus of the animal park, we head to the Triangle building, which winds up actually being a visitor center, and discover that just prior to the bombs being dropped, the park had been dealing with an animal rights group calling themselves Animal Friends and Defenders, or AFAD for short. AFAD apparently kidnapped one of the park scientists, Dr. Hine, and were holding him for ransom on the build site of the park's upcoming roller coaster ride. As it so happens, Dr. Hine is in possession of the key that we need to access the cloning facility. So, after a quick jaunt over to the Angry Anaconda to recover that, we're finally able to access and shut down the cloning machine. Dr. McDermott had been using it in an attempt to create a variation of gator claws to protect the park from the raiders following the bombs. He was never able to get the monsters to follow his orders though, and had to abandon the project when one of them injured him to the point where he was more or less on death's doorstep by the time he found Cedo. With the machine shut down, and Cedo and his family safe once more, we turn our attention to the sad story of the Kitty Kingdom. Unlike the other parks that were controlled by mindless robots and clones of monsters, the Kitty Kingdom is protected by a magician known as Oswald the Outrageous. Oswald is the last survivor from the original performers that called the park home. They'd holed up in the fantasy land for years, with each of them becoming ghouls as time marched on. But Oswald didn't just become a normal ghoul like the rest of them. He became a glowing one, while still maintaining his mental acuity. One by one, his friends all lost their minds, until only he and his beloved Rachel remained. Wanting to protect and cure their friends, and seeing no other options, Rachel set out into the wasteland in search of some kind of help, while Oswald remained behind to keep their home safe and await her return. After fighting our way through the park, we meet Oswald atop the castle and have the chance to convince him to go after her. He doesn't want to believe that his friends are lost for good, but in the end, I was able to convince him that they weren't able to be saved, and he agreed to go look for Rachel. But that's not the end of the story. See, there's a little town just northeast of Nuka World called Bradberton, named for the inventor of the park's namesake drink. There's a few bits and bobs to discover in the town, but by far the most important thing for our story is the body of a ghoul dressed in Nuka World gear laying in one of the houses. This is Rachel. It turns out that though she was able to explore some of the world in her search for a cure, she wasn't able to make it back to Oswald as she realized her condition was getting worse. She was turning feral and couldn't bear to let herself lose her mental faculties like that. After recording a goodbye tape, encouraging Oswald to head out into the world, she ended her life on her terms. I discovered her body after I'd already spoken to Oswald, so I've got no way to know if he ever learned what happened to her. But this might be the saddest tale in the DLC. But it isn't the final one, as we still need to return to Sierra with the clues that we've managed to gather as we cleared the parks. It only takes her a couple of seconds to put the puzzle together, revealing the password that we need is refreshing. Not the most creative secret code, but I guess it is what it is. Snooping around the office, we learned that Project Cobalt was a top-secret project where Nuka-Cola was assisting the military in the development of a new type of weapon using a chemical element known as strontium-90. But Bradberton wasn't overly enthusiastic about the partnership. At least, not until he was able to secure something for himself. See, he'd managed to find out about another project called Leap X, where the military was working to combine organic matter with machine to allow someone to basically live forever in some form. At first blush, this sounds a little like the experiments that we uncovered in the lair of the Mechanist, with the brains in jars. But as we'll find out, there are some key differences. Taking a secret elevator, hidden behind a bookshelf in the office, we find ourselves walking into a vault and coming face to face with the inventor of Nuka-Cola himself. Well, at least a piece of him. It turns out the Leap X project wasn't quite what Mr. Bradberton bargained for. They were able to preserve his head in a dome using some advanced life support tech, and he's been stuck in this vault for a little over 200 years, all alone. He says General Braxton, the commander he'd been negotiating about the Project Cobalt with, tricked him, and while that's possible, I think it's probably more likely that he failed to think ahead. One of the last emails we read in his office hints that the procedure he's planning to go through will end his ability to speak and show up in public. So he had to know at least a little about what to expect. And, as a matter of fact, we'll find another entry talking about the procedure in a nearby terminal, showing us that he did know what would be happening and still actively chose his fate. As it is, immortality isn't all it's cracked up to be in his current state, and he makes us an offer that's really too good to pass up. He's got a cache of some of the warheads that his company developed for the military in a locked room nearby, but we can't access it unless we turn off the power to his life support and end his suffering. The loneliness he's experienced in the vault has driven him at least a little mad, and he is not thrilled at the idea of spending another 2 centuries as a head in a jar. But Sierra doesn't like the idea of her hero drifting off into the big sleep, and she makes us a counteroffer. If we leave him alive so that she can keep him company and get to know him better, she'll give us a special edition Nuka-Cola jumpsuit. Sierra isn't really thinking this whole thing through. For one thing, I really want that prototype, but that's not even the real reason I'm leaning into turning off the power. See, while she might be able to keep him company for a little while, she is going to get bored or die eventually, and he'll be stuck here waiting on some other rube to accident their way into his vault. And that would be the best case scenario if he was even interested in her company. If he doesn't like her or want to chat it up with someone who seems to want nothing more than to talk about how great he is, leaving him alive could be more torture than anything. As it stands, the right call here is to turn off the power and relieve him of his misery. I'd likely want the same thing after spending 2 centuries staring at the same wall with no one to talk to. Shutting the power down, we're able to access the prototype and the Nuka-Cola formula, handing the latter to Sierra and making our way back out into the park. That's normally where I would end things, but there's one more piece that I want to talk about here. There are a variety of things and people to find outside of the actual park, with a group calling themselves Hubologists asking for your assistance to get their spaceship up and running, and a museum of shovels to be found in the wasteland, among other things. All of that is great, and if there's interest, I might even dive into those and other smaller stories from the wasteland in general. But there's one interaction in particular that deserves a special mention here. Just south of the park, sitting on top of an old, rusty Aerostream trailer body, you can find a young man by the name of Evan. If you strike up a conversation with him, he'll say he's been just kind of hanging out there for years, and even offer to just give you a special Nuka-Cola recipe called Nuka Love for free. It might just be an ordinary interaction with an overly generous NPC, except there's a lot more to this chance encounter. On June 27, 2016, a Reddit user by the name of Andy, username NoojXLVII, posted a thank you letter to Bethesda on the r/Fallout 4 subreddit. In the post, he talks about how he used the game, specifically the Automaton DLC, as a way to bond with his dad, who'd passed away the year before. He'd made a robot named GR-36 to honor his dad, who was named Greg, and he spent hours wandering the wasteland with the bot by his side, using the experience to help him get through the loss. He then goes on to talk about how he and his brother also used the game as a bonding experience, theorizing how they might handle various situations in the game if they were faced with them in real life. Not really too dissimilar to what I do here on the channel with games. At the time of the post, his brother was in the hospital dealing with some complications from diabetes, and the prognosis wasn't good. Within a couple of days, his brother, Evan, was gone. The post wound up gaining some traction, and a representative from Bethesda reached out to let Andy know that they would like to not only send him a special care package, but also include Evan as an NPC in the upcoming Nuka World DLC. And that is the Evan that we meet as we bring our time in Nuka World to an end. He's a reminder that there are things more important in life than games, but also that games can bring us together in ways that other media just can't. Games give us the chance to step out of our own lives, and whatever problems and difficulties we might be facing, for just a little while. They allow us to be the hero that saves the world, or the villain that watches it burn. They let us connect with friends and family that we might not otherwise get the chance to know, and as we see each week in the Philosophy and Ethics in Games series, they allow us to learn a little bit about ourselves and the world we live in through a digital, interactive environment. There's one stop left on our tour of the Fallout 4 universe. And next week, we'll be partnering with Nick Valentine, jumping on a boat, and heading into the fog of Far Harbor. You can book passage on the boat by liking this video and subscribing to Lost in Games here on YouTube. If you want to help with the purchase of ammo and armor to deal with the horrors the island of Far Harbor has to offer, you can sign up for a channel membership here or head over and join as a patron on Patreon. Both things go a long way toward helping me achieve my long-term goals with the channel and get your name on the screen of videos, as well as granting early access to those videos. That's all I've got for this one. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.